Richard Oldman Harrison wasn't just a grumpy but likable porn stars figure. He worked very hard and was very smart. Together they built a business. He quickly became a fan favorite when the show first aired on the History Channel in 2009. People liked him because of his sharp tongue and no-nonsense attitude. Richard had already built up his wealth, though, a long time before Pawn Stars became one of the most popular shows on the network. It all began at the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop in Las Vegas, Nevada. Richard Harrison opened the store in 1989 with his son Rick Harrison. From the start, it was a 24/7 business. People who wanted to buy, sell, or pawn valuable things found it very useful, even though it wasn't fancy or flashy. The shop became known over time for being honest, having a lot of knowledge, and having a lot of old and unusual things in its stock. When Richard was in his late 30s, people called him Old Man because of how serious he looked and acted. But despite his name, he had the best work ethic I've ever seen. Between 1994 and 2018, when he died, he never missed a day of work. Richard was 77 years old, but he had no plans to quit. He was always devoted to his family and the shop. Everything changed when Pawn Stars came out. What began as a simple idea for a television show quickly spread around the world. People really liked how the show mixed history, fun, and family relationships. It only took 3 months for the show to become the most watched show on the History Channel. Fans of Pawn Stars know the Harrison family and make the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop a must-see when they come to Las Vegas. Over the years, nearly 300 episodes have been filmed. Richard made $15,000 per episode because he was an important part of the show. The show was a huge hit, making the network $3 million per episode. It's not surprising that Richard's net worth reached $8 million by the time he died in 2018. His wealth came from more than just the show. He ran a pawn shop for decades and had a knack for finding expensive things. He left behind a tradition of hard work, smart business sense, and the ability to make money from anything. Now, here's the question. In what way did Richard Oldman Harrison become so rich? What did he do that made him so successful? More importantly, who would get the money he left behind? You have to go back to Richard Harrison's younger years to understand how he became the old man with $8 million net worth. Richard was born in Danville, Virginia in 1941. He grew up in a poor home. When he was a year old, his parents moved to Lexington, North Carolina. They found a small house on Peacock Avenue and made it their home. Life wasn't always easy, and Richard learned early on how important it was to work hard. At age 14, he was already working as a bus driver to make money. Each week, he made only $5 or $6. Richard dropped out of high school in his junior year to help support his family. But things took a big turn when he was caught stealing a car. He did not want to go to jail, so he decided to join the Navy. Even though he made this choice under a lot of stress, it changed his life in ways that no one could have imagined. He joined the US Navy when he was only 17 years old and stayed there for 20 years. He worked on 4 different ships during this time and got promoted to Petty Officer First Class. One of them was the fleet tug USS Choanock. Being a paymaster taught him how to handle money. That skill would be very important to his pawnshop business in the future. It wasn't always easy being in the Navy, though. After 20 years of service, Richard was sent to sea 14 times, away from his family. That was the only thing he ever said he didn't like. Even though things were hard, Richard stayed dedicated to his work because he felt very responsible for it. One of those duties was taking care of his family. Richard married his high school love, Joanne Rue, in 1960. Not long after that, they had their first child, Sherry, who has Down syndrome. Richard re-enlisted in the Navy after taking a short break to pay for her huge medical bills. Her death at age 6 was very sad, but Richard's memories of her and the things he did for her shaped him into the man he is today, someone who always puts his family first. When Richard got out of the Navy in 1979, he and Joanne had to deal with a new problem. Joanne had worked hard to make her real estate business successful, and Richard joined her as a part-time worker. They were doing really well for a while, but when the economy crashed in the early 1980s and mortgage rates went through the roof, their business went out of business. They lost almost everything, even savings worth $1 million. Richard and Joanne moved to Las Vegas, Nevada, with only $5,000 left in their bank account. They took their 3 boys with them in 1981 to begin again. Richard's business sense and toughness really started to show in Las Vegas. The Gold and Silver Coin Shop was started by him and his son Rick with their last bit of money. It was only 300 square feet. It wasn't fancy, but it was a start. Over time, they moved to a bigger space and grew their business. Eventually, they got a license to buy and sell used items. But Rick and Richard had bigger plans. They planned to start a pawn shop, for which a special license was needed in Las Vegas. At that time, the city only gave each of the 50,000 people who lived there one pawn license. The Harrisons had to wait until there were 250,000 people living there. That finally happened in 1989, and the gold and silver pawn shop opened. It was only 2 miles from the Las Vegas Strip. After that, the business kept getting bigger. By 2005, Richard and Rick were giving out loans worth around $3 million a year, getting interest income of $700,000. People who like to gamble, gather things, and learn about history all went to the pawn shop. The shelves were full of jewelry, sports memorabilia, and rare things that had interesting stories behind them. Richard was known for having a sharp eye and negotiating in a straightforward way. He was quick to spot a fake and wasn't afraid to back out of a bad deal. His time in the Navy taught him how to be disciplined, and his hard times made him wise. Things changed in 2009 when Pawn Stars appeared on the History Channel. It made the family business famous all over the world. The show was a big hit right away because it had a mix of history, fun, and family life. It quickly rose to the top of the network's ratings in just 3 months. Richard wasn't ready for the fame, but he dealt with it in his own way. He was known for being grumpy but likable, and he often played the grumpy father figure. But he was very interested in the business behind the scenes. To make sure everything ran smoothly, they often got to the shop before anyone else and stayed late. The family got a lot of money from Pawn Stars' fame. There were thousands of people in the shop every day instead of just 70 a day. By 2012, between 3,000 and 5,000 people were going there every day. People stood in line to meet the Harrison family and see the store that had become famous in pop culture. Richard made $15,000 per show, which added to his already huge wealth. When he died in 2018, he was thought to have been worth about $8 million. Richard was rich, but it wasn't all money. It was about the morals he taught his family. He taught his kids and grandkids how to be honest, work hard, and keep going even when things get tough. Even though he was successful, he never forgot where he came from or the hard times that made him who he was. No matter what life threw at you, he thought you should keep going. He once said, "Don't think about the past. You have a long life ahead of you. Enjoy it to the fullest." What would happen to the money that Richard worked so hard to earn? What effects did his death have on his family and the business he left behind? It was June 2018 when Richard Oldman Harrison died. He left behind a legacy that went far beyond the gold and silver pawn shop. Richard's death marked the end of an age. He was known for having a sharp mind, a rough sense of humor, and a deep love for his family. But, as with any family business, his death made people wonder who would continue his work and earn money from the company he built. Richard's will spelled out how to handle his fortune, which is thought to be worth $8 million. It was surprising that his will wasn't as clear-cut as you might think. At first, Richard named his wife Joanne and his 3 kids Rick, Joseph, and Christopher as his beneficiaries. But just 1 year before he died, he made a shocking change. In a new form of the will, Richard took Christopher, his youngest son, off the list of people who would receive the money. He wrote in the new version of the paper, "I'd like to tell Christopher Keith Harrison how much I love and care for him. However, for the purposes of this will, I have purposely and knowingly not taken care of him and his problem." A lot of friends and even some family members were confused by this choice. Why would Richard leave his younger son out of the will? What had happened to make him act so bravely? Unfortunately, Richard never explained his choice, so we still don't know why he made it. No matter what, it was clear that he had given the distribution of his wealth a lot of thought. He left most of his money to his wife Joanne and his son Rick, who had worked with him for decades and run the pawn shop. As the oldest son and the one who worked on the business the most, Rick was also named the agent of the will, letting him handle his father's property. Rick had worked with his dad at the pawn shop since it opened in 1989, and his death had a big effect on him. He looked up to Richard as a role model and said that Richard taught him the importance of working hard, being honest, and having fun. Rick saw running the family business as more than just his duty. It was a way for him to respect his father. The gold and silver pawn shop has stayed a successful business and a must-see for Pawn Stars fans while Rick has been in charge.